We're continue the study of this conference put out by the Dominican priests in 2013, right after the explosion in the SSPX, with the basically Vatican II in the SSPX, Vatican IIb. So we saw the first part. We saw the points made, which were one, anybody?
The heart of the fight is no longer Christ the King, but the Mass.
Right. Not that the Mass is not important. In the heart, it's the heart of the church. But you could say the Mass is to the doctrine, the faith, what the heart is to the mind, what the engine is to the steering wheel. The steering wheel is like the intellect. The engine is like the will. You need both, right? And if it's all engine and no steering wheel, yeah, you can drive 200 miles an hour off a cliff, right? But the steering wheel is directs. So the steering wheel is actually, in one way, more important than the engine. But it can't go far without the engine. So you need both. So we have the intellect and will working together. So the Mass is the heart of the church, but the doctrine, the dogmas of the faith, are the mind of the church, the steering wheel. Okay, what was the second point? 1, 2, change of perspective.
However, there is a significant change to the extent that the heart of the fight is no longer Christ the King, but the Mass.
Yes, and then page 5, number 2. What was the other?
Between eternal Rome and the Rome of the neo-modernist and neo-Protestant tendencies, which was the basis of Archbishop Lefebvre's rules of engagement, has been obliterated.
Obliterated. It's true. Bishop Fillet no longer makes that distinction between conciliar church and Catholic church. So we're on page 7, point number 2, 3. Bishop Fillet imposes the new discourse in tradition. Bishop Fillet has not only changed his language, but he prohibits. So it's not just naivete and smiles, right? That's what everybody has the impression of. Oh, it's just all goodwill and smiles and everything is just wonderful. No, he prohibits others from keeping the same language as Archbishop Lefebvre. Actually punishes them. Priests have been punished, transferred, silenced. I was silenced for a whole period, for a couple, 3, 4 months. Because of my sermon of 2012 at the first Mass of Father Ruder, where I just quoted Archbishop Lefebvre, our founder. All I did was quote to make the point. And then Father Piver's book, that was banned, and Mrs. Flassy just finished the English translation, handwritten notes. So we're going to get those typed. So we're about 200 yards in the sprint from having it printed. We'll have to have it reprinted. You think the Angelus will do it? No, Bishop Fillet banned it to be printed in English, but it needs to go out there. Father Piver's book. All right, but he prohibits others from keeping the same language as Archbishop Lefebvre. The Dominicans of Avriation know, because they all had first-hand experience of this. First, in April 2013, the Dominicans published in French their letter to friends and benefactors. I remember this, simply recalling what was said from the beginning of tradition about the conciliar church. Now, I think we read this letter. It's at the very end of this conference. So we read it, and if you recall, September 2013, the letter number 14. Oh, so this is a different letter. Okay. But similar. The letter did not bother Father de Cacqueret at all. Father de Cacqueret at the time was District Superior of France, which in the Society of St. Pius X is a very high position. And Father de Cacqueret was very solid. He was very good. Very, very good. Another time we're going to have to read his letter that he put out not long before this, condemning Pope Benedict XVI Assisi meeting. It was a great letter, blasted throughout all the world. And Bishop Follet asked Father de Coqueret, why did you print that letter? And he reminded him, well, I asked you and you gave permission. And Bishop Follet was quite upset. So it tells you, there was already pressure on the priests. But when they had translated it into English for their English-speaking friends, the letter from the Dominicans, number 14, September 2013. Oh, so it is the same letter. I get it. So in April it came out in French. In September 14th it came out in English. So that's the letter we read in the previous conference. And it was just solid, right? Quoting Archbishop Lefebvre and the position of this traditional SSPX. So Father Rostand, then District Superior of the United States, sent the following note to his priests, dated September 14th, 2013. So same day. So the reaction was really hot. Here it is. I am sorry that the Dominican Fathers did not ask permission to send these flyers to the U.S. chapels. Footnote, the Dominicans didn't have to ask permission to send this letter. Father Rostand, having given them a permanent permission for all the letters when he was appointed superior of the district. So the Dominicans were always our friends of the Society of Pius X. I mean, everything they printed was dynamite. Everything the Society printed was very good. And what the Benedictines printed was also good. No one had to get permission from anybody because we were all in the same fight of tradition, with the same understanding and the same position of Archbishop Lefebvre. But now, since they turned from the position of Archbishop Lefebvre, well, you have to start asking permission. The letter defends a thesis about the conciliar church, says Father Rostand, which the dissidents has used against the society in the past. In a remarkable article, Father Glez has explained a position quite different in the Courrier de Rome, February 2013, Angelus Magazine, July-August 2013. While I would not mind theological discussions between theologians, I am opposed to putting our faithful in a dialectic position, and therefore ask that these flyers be removed and not distributed to the faithful. I remember this. Please keep this note confidential and suppress the letters as discreetly as possible to avoid further dialectic. Oh, so we don't want the faithful being reminded of Archbishop Lefebvre's old position, because we're taking a new position, basically. We continue. We do not know what the dissidents may have been or what may have said in the United States. In any case, page 8, the controversial thesis is only the discourse used in tradition since its existence. We clearly see here that this discourse is no longer allowed because of a new thesis issued by Father Glez. In a private meeting at the seminary in Flavigny in France, December 18, 2013, Bishop Follet confirmed to the Dominicans that he approved Father Rostand's ban. Open brackets, this is public information, and I don't rejoice over this at all, but right now, Father Rostand, who silenced many priests, punished many priests, was the instrument of Bishop Follet to bring the new crackdown, and flew from Kansas City to Ridgefield, Connecticut, to make sure the prior there would refuse communion to a man who was running a website exposing the SSPX liberalism. So Father Rostand right now is behind bars in a prison in Switzerland, our friends, for pedophilia. Sad to say. I wish it wasn't true, but so. And Bishop Follet apparently knew Father Rostand had done this, but put him in a high position. And Father Rostand apparently was quite honest and said, look, I've got this problem. don't put me in these positions, please. And Bishop Follet put him right into the boys' school, right into high positions. So something very fishy with that. So now he's behind bars. Poor father. Next point. Bishop Tissy de Mallory answered Father Glaise in an article published in the Revue Salutaire, number 85, concluding from the text of Archbishop Lefebvre that the Pope still being the Pope, the Conciliar Church is a real organization with its new dogmas, its new priesthood, worship, canon law, etc. It is a question of a counterfeit church led by a faction which has taken control of the leadership positions. The Catholic Church, meanwhile, is reduced to the faithful and bishops who have kept the faith, the true faith. However, at the same meeting in Flavigny on December 18, 2013, Bishop Follet reproached the Dominicans for publishing Bishop Tissier's article in Salutaire. So you see, Bishop Follet was not all smiles and naive. Here he is, shooting at his friends. It's all friendly fire now. He even added that Bishop Tissier had finally agreed with Father Glaise's new thesis. Notice, new thesis. When he came to Avrier in June 2014, Bishop Tissier told the Dominicans that he had not changed his position. He still held to what he had written in his article, and still believed that this article reflects the thinking of Archbishop Lefebvre. So a little bit of dishonesty there too, huh? 2.4, the consequence of the new manner of speaking about the church. So we're looking at Bishop Follet imposes the new discourse in tradition, a new branding, we could say, a new direction, a new orientation, a new way of speaking. 2.4, we cannot blame anyone for being troubled by the new language. Is it without consequence? Everyone read what's in the box.
If you say that the official church is the Church of Jesus Christ, how can you not come to the conclusion that it is absolutely necessary to be officially recognized, because one cannot say out the Church of Jesus Christ?
Right. Once you erase those lines, then it all becomes one church, conciliar and Catholic. So that's the tactic of modernists. Father Pfluger, the first assistant general of the Society of Pius X, has come to this conclusion. In an interview given to Dici in October 16, 2012, he said, quote, "For our part," read on, Michael, loud and clear.
"We suffer also from a defeat."
No, from a defect.
From a defect. The fact of our canonical irregularity. The status of the post-conciliar church is imperfect, nor is our status the ideal. There is no denying the obligation to take an active part in overcoming the crisis. And this combat begins with us by desiring to overcome our abnormal canonical status.
Footnote 21, interview with Father Nicholas Pfluger, Dici, 2012. So it's well documented. So I remember Father Pfluger saying all this stuff, and we're not irregular. We're just Catholic. Who's irregular is those changing the faith, right? Therefore, for the first assistant to Bishop Follet, our principal role in the present crisis of the Church, says Father Pfluger, does not consist this is the new position, conclusion of the Dominicans. For Father Pfluger, our principal role in the present crisis of the Church does not consist essentially in professing the
faith
and combating the
errors
that oppose the
faith
and denouncing the scandals that destroy the faith, but in seeking a
canonical status in the conciliar church.
This is exactly the opposite of what Archbishop Lefebvre never ceased to affirm. Here's Archbishop Lefebvre, December 21st, 1984. First the faith, then recognition. The canonical, quote Archbishop Lefebvre, the canonical question purely exterior and public in the church is secondary. What is important is to stay in the church, that is to stay in the Catholic faith of all times, and in the true priesthood, and in the true Mass, and in the true sacraments, and in the Catechism of all times, and in the Bible of all times. That is the church. Being publicly recognized, that is secondary. So Archbishop Lefebvre had a clear vision. Now they're saying it's more important we get canonically recognized. Put the faith on the back burner. Opposing this new argumentation of Father Pfluger, Bishop Tissi de Mallory protested in his ordination sermon on June 23, 2013 in Écône, Switzerland, Bishop Follet being present, saying, "We are not in a
abnormal situation.
but in an exceptional situation.
So, big difference, right? We are not in an abnormal situation, but in an exceptional situation. We think it is normal and very meritorious to disobey the letter of canon law in order to obey its spirit and to keep the true faith. It is an exceptional situation, a necessary attitude caused by the apostasy of the conciliar church. There is nothing abnormal on our side. It is a healthy reaction for survival." It's wonderful. It's so clear. Let us again listen to Archbishop Lefebvre loud and clear, please. Guadalupe.
Well, one can say that those people in Rome are antichrists. We don't have to worry about the reactions of those people. We are not dealing with honest people.
Yeah, we're not dealing with honest people in Rome. And we know they're not honest because a lot of them are involved with the Lavender Mafia, it's called. Horrible thing. And they cheered the LGBTQ people marching into St. Peter's to desecrate St. Peter's. So yeah, there's a lot of dishonest and gross and twisted people walking in cardinal robes and bishops' cassocks. Frightful. Let us now move on to another, no less important point. 3. Everyone?
Silence regarding the Roman scandals.
Yes, so you got Pope Francis. I mean, he's headline news for scandals. I mean, every week of his papacy was scandal, 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 scandal. And silence from Bishop Follet, Bishop Gallaretta. Bishop Williamson was, of course, kicked out, but he said some things. 3.1, the painful but necessary duty to warn the faithful about the misguided ways of the successors of Peter. In the book titled 1962 Revolution in the Church by Don Andrea Mancinella, a conciliar priest who joined tradition, answers the following question. Should he, in his book, limit himself to attacking the wayward actions of the bishop without mentioning the Pope? In other words, is a Catholic allowed to attack the Pope personally? And here's what he says, Don Andrea Mancinella. This is page 16 and 17. Loud and clear, please, Gavril.
In fact, the fact is that we cannot do otherwise. The Pope is not just any bishop, but the vicar of Christ. It is he who guides the entire church militant. If a pope is imbued with an erroneous theology, already condemned by the church, it is a catastrophe for the vast majority of souls who will continue to follow him, even the risk of losing their faith and their eternal salvation. That is why we have the necessary but thankless duty to warn the clergy and the faithful.
Yes. So our Lord, did he name names in St. John the Baptist?
Yes.
Yes.
Who did St. John the Baptist name?
Herod.
King Herod.
Herod, for taking Herod's brother Philip, he married his wife. He took his brother's wife. So, St. John the Baptist named names. And he publicly denounced that scandal. So sometimes it's a sin not to point out the wolf. that's the way it is. And Archbishop Lefebvre, did he name names? Yes, he did. And did our Lord name names? Yes. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Herod, that fox. Christ called Herod a sly fox. Right? So when St. Athanasius was combating the heresies of Arius, did he name Arius by name?
Yes.
Yes. And who did St. Irenaeus? I think it was. No, St. Ignatius of Antioch. When he met in Rome in the streets the heretic Marcion, what did he say to him? Anyone remember?
Something
same.
about you're son of the devil or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Marcion said, "Oh, hi, Bishop Ignatius. I'm Marcion. My diocese is such and such, and I'm the bishop of such and such." And he said, "No, you are Marcion, son of the devil." So these saints didn't pull punches. And if you want to read some real heavy swinging, read St. Jerome. Talk about not pulling back and naming names. St. Jerome doesn't pull punches. Page 10. Of course, when it is a question of churchmen, it is necessary to give them the respect they deserve so as not to denigrate their function. Right? So we don't make fun of Bishop Fillet calling him Bernie. And we don't make fun of the Pope calling him, Leo. We call him Pope Leo XIV. We don't make fun of Pope Benedict XVI calling him Benny, like some people were doing. And, we respect the popes and bishops and cardinals. We respect their authority. But we have to expose them when they are a danger to the sheep. Archbishop Lefebvre never insulted the Pope or the bishops. However, he publicly warned the faithful about them. For an example, it suffices to read the ordination sermons he gave every year in Écône. So here's 2 quotes from Archbishop Lefebvre. In 1977, read it loud and clear, Perrin.
We cannot help but recognize that for 15 or 20 years, those who are in the highest positions in the Church, the Holy See, and the Vatican itself have been leading us away from the Catholic faith, have become the friends of our enemies, what is left of the Catholic Church today.
See, he's pointing right at the Pope himself. And the Archbishop, when he preaches this, right, you can hear his talks in French. And he's not rejoicing. You can hear it's deep in his soul, the sadness. He's really grieving, like to see the church and the Pope doing this. He's really sad for the church because he loved the church. He was a true man of the Catholic Church. And same with us. We don't rejoice in this, but we have to deal with the facts. Next quote, 1978. Read on, Andres.
We now know with whom we are dealing. We know perfectly well that we are dealing with a diabolical hand that is in Rome, that demands by obedience the destruction of the Church. I believe that I have the right to ask these men who are sitting at the desks once occupied by cardinals who were very saintly and who defended the Church and the Catholic faith. I think I have the right to ask them, are you the Catholic Church? With whom am I dealing? Am I dealing with someone who has made a pact with Freemasonry? Do I have to speak with such people?
Yeah, wow. So he's showing that, they're Masons too. Too often now, the General House in Menzingen wants us to believe that these men in Rome are very honorable. Before speaking with Cardinal Mueller, for example, shouldn't Bishop Fillet have asked him what he thinks of the perpetual virginity of the Blessed Virgin, and refuse to speak with him unless he professes the Catholic faith of this person? So yes, everyone knows Cardinal Mueller publicly said that Our Lady was not perpetually a virgin. That's a dogma of the faith. So the Dominicans are saying, and they're right, Bishop Fillet shouldn't be buddying conversing with him unless he makes clear, the Catholic faith, basics, Catholic faith. These are not theological distinctions. These are just basic catechism, right? In his writings, Archbishop Lefebvre was not any less clear. In the prologue of his book, Spiritual Journey, we read, quote, this is in the prologue, loud and clear, Anthony.
John Paul II is above all a communist-loving politician at the service of a world communism with religious overtones.
Who is a communist-loving politician?
John
Paul II.
Did he say his name?
Yes.
Was he Pope?
Yes.
Yes. So, see? And some people say, well, you can't say names. That's detraction. Well, detraction is saying a truth about someone in order to destroy their reputation. And it would be, for example, revealing a private sin that someone did. All right? So, so-and-so hit his wife this morning. Well, that takes place in their house. That's between them. That should just stay where it is and not blab it out. But these are public acts of public figures. It's a total different ballgame, right? When public people cause public scandal, would St. John the Baptist have sinned if he remained silent?
Yes.
Against Herod's adultery?
Yes.
Yes, he would have. But because he denounced it by name, he ended up where?
In the dungeon.
And ended up how?
With his head.
chopped off.
On a plate.
At the request of who?
Herod's daughter.
Herodias.
Who do you think influenced Herodias' daughter? Herodias. So here the daughter and the mother conspired in a wicked plan. We could easily quote the majority of the sermons, public conferences, and writings of Archbishop Lefebvre. Yes, in many places he does this. He mentions, and he's saddened deeply over this. We must also mention the two declarations made with Bishop de Castro-Mayor publicly, which was made during two press conferences. First, open letter to Pope John Paul II, December 1983. And then second, public warning of August 31st, 1985. Quote here, this is Bishop Tissier de Malloret, conference at the Gastines Priory in France, September 16th, 2012. This is Bishop Tissier speaking here, Michael, loud and clear. Bottom of page 10.
Archbishop Lefebvre transmitted all that he had received, all the heritage of Father Lefebvre from the French seminary in Rome, all his experience. He left all that to the society, and that still works, but on the condition that we continue with the same spirit of combat.
With the same spirit of what?
Combat.
The same spirit of what?
Combat.
The same spirit of peace, concord, and handshaking?
No.
The same spirit of what?
Combat.
Go on.
It is out of the question of laying down our arms in the middle of the battle. We are not going to look for a treaty while the war is raging, with a CC3 or 4, with the beatification of a false blessed pope, John Paul II, and with Benedict XVI, continuous demand to accept the council and the reforms and magisterium after the council.
Yes, that's Bishop Tissier. So he was good, really solid. Let's pray for his soul. 3.2, the silence of the successors of Archbishop Lefebvre. So here we come to the silence. And they come out and say, well, no, my priest still preached against the new Mass. The priest still preached against Vatican II, but it's very, very toned down compared to yesteryear. Believe me, very toned down. The situation in Rome has deteriorated considerably since the death of Archbishop Lefebvre. However, we no longer hear language like his. We could even ask if very many of today's traditionalists would accept such language. So they'd be scandalized if they heard Archbishop Lefebvre preach. For example, Father Jacques Laguerre, first assistant to Father de Cacqueret, then French district superior, stated in January 2014, quote, read it, Guadalupe.
The publication Dici, which is the official communications organ of the SSPX, always publishes the acts of the Pope, which are the least harmful to souls and never the scandals. Yet, it is necessary to attack Rome in order to maintain the principal truth of the faith. Otherwise, the combat is false.
True. So what's he saying here?
That we have to attack all the scandals, not just pinpoint the smaller ones.
Right. Yes. Especially the ones that go against the highest virtue, which is
Faith.
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 It's the foundational virtue, I would say. Highest is charity, but the foundation of all the virtues is the
Faith.
This orientation of Dici continues despite numerous protests coming regularly from society priests. Father Laguerre says, during the meeting in Suresnes, the district house in France, I complained to Bishop Follet 3 times about Dici, and nothing has changed. So Father Laguerre, he was quite a good priest in Saint Nicolas de Chardonnay in Paris. He was, ask Roger Lambert about, because he was a young man there helping at Saint Nicolas at the time. And that's when they took the church with Monsignor Ducot de Bourget, and there was a lot going on. And Father Laguerre, I met him in '88, very zealous, good priest, but he warned Bishop Follet, hey, you got to denounce these scandals of the Pope, and he saw. But Father Laguerre, sadly, he founded the Good Shepherd Institute. He broke from the society in 2015 because he kind of did a flip, and he was hoping to get an agreement with Rome. And he founded in 2000, I think it was 2005, the Good Shepherd Institute, with, traditional and seminary, but with approval from Rome. And then a few years later, Rome said, okay, now you got to start teaching the documents of Vatican II in your seminary. So he later warned Bishop Follet, don't take any agreements from Rome. They're going to trap you. But Bishop Follet didn't listen. On October 27th, 2011, when Pope Benedict XVI renewed the scandal of Assisi, not a single communique came from Menzingen to protest against such an abomination. I remember this. I was in the SSPX in 2011, October. And I was expecting Bishop Follet, he's going to come out and denounce this. He has to. Silence. In one little conference somewhere in Austria or something, he gave a tiny little peep against it. But nothing compared to Archbishop Lefebvre, who, public letters, conferences, sermons, blasting Assisi. So that was very recognizable difference, that attitude. And then this is when Father de Cacqueret wrote that great letter denouncing Assisi 4, and that's when Bishop Follet scolded him. This silence is all the more surprising since in 2002, Bishop Follet criticized the clergy at Campos, Brazil, for not having reacted publicly when Pope John Paul II organized the same meeting in the town of St. Francis. The Campos clergy had just joined with Conciliar Rome. This is the old Bishop Follet speaking. So this is 2002. This is what Bishop Follet used to say. He says here, read it loud and clear, Gavril.
We must distinguish between a loss of the virtue of faith itself and a loss of public confession of the faith, which is necessary in certain circumstances, as Bishop de Castro-Mayor so well recalled on the day of the Episcopal consecrations, 1988. Quote, a prevarication such as this one in Assisi demands a public confession, which we have not heard coming from Campos.
Yeah, so Bishop Vallée was complaining, hey, Campos is silent, because they made their agreement with Rome in 2003. And he wrote them too, don't fall for the trap. You're just going to make, if you get approval by Rome, you'll just become an animal in the cage, like a zoo of tradition. You got, the panda bears of the Buddhists, you've got the lions of the Muslims, and here you have the peaceful monkeys of the traditionalists. Bishop Vallée was seeing clear. But what happened? What happened? We all must tremble and fear ourselves. If you and I have the faith, we must pray and humbly beg to persevere, because we could lose it too. We have to pray every day for perseverance, because even the high mountains have fallen. The tall trees, Bishop Vallée and cardinals, bishops, popes have fallen. It's frightening. This war is frightening. And now we have not heard of such a public confession of faith coming from Menzingen. We had some episcopal silence. We had the same episcopal silence with the false canonizations of John the 23rd and John Paul II. Bishop Vallée did not criticize these so-called canonizations, except when writing to the friends and benefactors of the society, saying only that they, quote, create a problem for Catholic consciences, without ever saying that these canonizations are invalid. Same thing regarding the so-called beatification of Paul VI, where he only said that, quote, we have most serious reservations. In addition, he praises Paul VI for his encyclical Humanae Vitae, saying that, quote, it brought light and comfort to Catholic families, which is false. Humanae Vitae is not a great document, in fact, but that's another day. On the same day of these pseudo-canonizations of John the 23rd and John Paul II, Bishop Tissier de Mallaré celebrated a pontifical high mass in the novitiate of the Society of St. Pius X Sisters of Ruffec in France. In the sermon there was not a single word about what was happening at that very same moment in Rome. Millions of Catholics around the world have been deceived, and not a single bishop's voice has been heard in public protest. What is left of the church? It is tragic. So, this sentence still applies. We don't hear the bishops anymore. Even the six consecrated by Bishop Williamson, we just don't hear them. We don't hear them. And when the voices of the prophets are silent, that's a sign of huge punishment. Huge. We can add the letter to friends and benefactors of the Society of December 2014. Nothing about Pope Francis. And it was after the scandalous synod on the family, after the prayer in the mosque of Istanbul, in the direction of Mecca. Bishop Vallée even began his letter by a quotation of Cardinal Ratzinger, and not to criticize it. So I remember this going on. And remember, Pope Benedict also prayed at a mosque and hid his cross, took off his shoes, faced Mecca, didn't make the sign of the cross. That was a huge scandal. In November 2013 issue of Cor Unum, which is the priest's internal letter for society priests, Bishop Vallée wrote, I ask superiors to respect the necessity to request permission before making any declaration on questions concerning Rome. Yes, so this is similar to the fax that was sent out in January, February of 2013, where he asked all the priors, he had a whole list. No more preaching against the agreement with Rome. Anything to do with Rome, you have to have permission of the superiors. When before, you don't need no permission, because Rome didn't have the faith, we had the faith. You just preach the faith. And no mentioning political figures anymore by name. So denouncing their pro-abortion stand, for example. You can preach against abortion, but you can't mention the name of the politician. You know, but Catholics need to be told, you can't vote for Obama. And I said, you're not, well, you know, I know this is a big ground of dispute, but Catholics can't compromise. And I told many Catholics from the pulpit, you can't vote for a pro-abortion candidate. That means Trump. He was pro-IVF and pro the pill for abortion. And some people got really scandalized by me saying that, but I still stand by it. We can't vote for a pro-abortion candidate. Yeah, but he's good in everything else. He's pro-gun. He's pro-America. He's pro-this, pro-that. But pro-killing the babies? You can't accept that. And I remember in the 70s and 80s, the Navasoto bishops in the United States coming out strong. You cannot vote for a pro-abortion candidate. Those are Navasoto bishops, right? And now we have traditional Catholics voting for a pro-abortion candidate? What happened? How'd they come to this? Archbishop Lefebvre never promulgated such a measure. That is, you can't preach against modernist Rome. Never did he do this. Read in the box, who's next? I think it's Perrin. Read in the box, please.
The simple fact of no longer denouncing Roman scandals, or of doing so only timidly, which avoid an attack on the Pope by name, makes tradition look more and more like the
Ecclesia Dei.
Ecclesia Dei communities who have abandoned the fight for the faith.
Okay, this is not coming from Father Hewko. This is the Dominicans in Avrier, and they're right. If you are silent against even mentioning the Pope scandals, you're harming the church. You're harming souls. You're doing a disservice. And a lot of traditional Catholics they can't stomach this. You can't not allowed to name names. That's against charity. Well, sometimes the thieves that break into your house and try to kill your family have names and faces. And they have to be, by name, arrested and by name punished, right? So we don't live in nebulous la-la land. There are really evil people. And sometimes wolves have to be denounced by name. Popes have excommunicated heretics by name. St. Pius X excommunicated a handful of modernists by name. Tyrrell, who's the other one? Loisy. And then Pius XII condemned Teilhard de Chardin, a priest, by name. Right? This negligence, which Bishop Follet reproached the Campos Brazil priests in 2003, can be applied more and more to the society. So here's Bishop Follet speaking in 2003 when he was still had his head on straight on the Campos silence. Read that loud and clear, please, Andres. And you do ring the bell at the normal times.
Yes, on the 18th of January 2002 at Campos, there was not only a one-sided recognition of Campos by Rome, but also a compensation, the complicity of silence. In this way, little by little, the fight lessens, and one finishes by getting accustomed to the situation. Of course, everything that is positively traditional at Campos is conserved. Therefore, the faithful do not see any change, except the most clear-sighted ones who notice the tendency to speak more respectfully of Roman declarations and events, omitting the warnings given before and the present Roman deviations.
So this very quote we can apply now to the new SSPX. The complicity of silence, They don't speak so much against the scandals, and they're just getting comfortable. Very dangerous. The danger is very great because when one begins to no longer speak out and to no longer warn the faithful, one advances little by little towards an acceptance of errors. As Archbishop Lefebvre used to say, as soon as the Ecclesia Dei communities no longer speak out, they begin to
Slide.
very
Slowly.
until they finish by admitting the errors of. So true. Look at the sound thinking of Archbishop Lefebvre. As soon as the Ecclesia Dei communities, now the new SSPX, no longer speak out, they begin to slide very slowly until they finish by admitting the errors of Vatican II. That's Archbishop Lefebvre, Fideliter, number 79, 1991. Page 13, 4. Relations with Conciliar Rome. Everyone?
Relations with Conciliar Rome
Can a practical agreement be considered without a doctrinal agreement?
Yes. Can a practical agreement be considered without a doctrinal agreement? 4.1. The position of the Archbishop and of the Society until the General Chapter of 2012. Archbishop Lefebvre clearly explained to Cardinal Ratzinger why we are not able to be in agreement with Conciliar Rome. Eminence, said Archbishop Lefebvre, July 14th, 1987, even if you grant us a bishop, even if you give us a certain independence regarding the diocesan bishops, even if you grant us all the 1962 liturgy, if you allow us to continue our seminaries in the society as we do today, doesn't that sound wonderful? We get our bishop, our seminary, we're allowed to preach, our old liturgy. Sounds great, right? But look, we will not be able to collaborate. It is impossible because we are working in two diametrically opposed directions. So even if you give us all we want, we can't work together. Why? Yes, you are working for the de-Christianization of society, of the human person, the de-Christianization of the church. We are working for the Christianization. We cannot agree. You just told me that society cannot be Catholic. And that's Archbishop Lefebvre. Archbishop Lefebvre, conference given during a priest retreat at Écône, September 1st, 1987. So, Benedict XVI said you can't have Catholic states anymore. That's what he means. Yet for Archbishop Lefebvre, the problem was not only that of an impossible collaboration, as in fact it would not be a question of collaboration between equals. An agreement would most of all put us under a
modernist authority.
It is this subordination that was the most
Dangerous for the Archbishop.
He reproached all the Ecclesia Dei communities for this subordination, whatever their nuances. So who are the Ecclesia Dei communities? St. Peter's Society, all those who kept the Latin Mass and came under Pope Benedict XVI. Those were the Ecclesia Dei communities. And it was started by John Paul II. So they were the insult masses, committing indultery. And this is a quote from Archbishop Lefebvre, letter to Pope John Paul II, June 2nd, 1988. Michael?
The transfer of authority is the most dangerous. This transfer is excessively grievous. It is not sufficient to say, quote, we have not changed anything in our practices, unquote. It is the transfer of authority that is very dangerous, because the intention of these authorities is to destroy tradition.
Bam. Why is it dangerous to put ourselves under these authorities? Because the authorities intend to what?
Destroy tradition.
Yes. That's why you don't put yourselves under them, modernist bishops. Next quote, Guadalupe.
We find ourselves in the absolute necessity of having ecclesiastical authorities who embrace our concerns and will help us protect ourselves against the spirit of Vatican II and the spirit of Assisi.
You're right. But we don't have that yet, right? No, none of these popes or cardinals do this. It is, and then the next important quotation, Archbishop Lefebvre, it is not the inferiors who make the superiors, but the superiors who make the
inferiors.
Repeat that, everyone.
It is not the inferiors who make the superiors, but the superiors who make the inferiors.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yes, it is. It is. Superiors form the inferiors. You know, and it's happened. Many people go into the novice order. We're going to be traditional. We're going to be, get inside and convert the church from within. After 5, 6, 7 years under novice order professors, novice order bishops, novice order priests, they come out novice order. This is why in his letter to the future bishops written before the episcopal consecrations in 1988, Archbishop Lefebvre did not consider that they would be able one day to place their episcopacy in other hands than those of a perfectly Catholic pope. Archbishop Lefebvre, letter to future bishops, August 28th, 1987, loud and clear, Gavril.
I will bestow this grace of the episcopacy upon you, confident that without too long a delay, the see of Peter will be occupied by a successor of Peter who is perfectly Catholic, and into whose hands you will be able to put back the grace of your episcopacy so that he may confirm it.
So what is the Archbishop saying? In other words?
We wait for a fully, completely uncompromising Catholic bishop before putting ourselves under Rome.
Catholic bishop?
I mean Pope, I'm sorry.
Well, he's the Bishop of Rome, so yeah. But Father de Merode, who, I fail often to mention Father de Merode, but he's also with the Catholic Resistance. He's not as loud and he's not as known, but Father de Merode is really with us in the fight. And he's friends of Abrier, and he's in Lourdes in France. But I remember him saying this in his statement when he left the SSPX. He said, the Archbishop said, no games with Rome, no dealing until Rome comes back to tradition and until we have a perfectly Catholic Pope. We don't have a Catholic Pope, especially Pope Francis, and this is not the time. And right now we don't have a perfectly Catholic Pope, so it's not the time for putting ourselves in obedience to his dangerous demands. Yes.
How do you spell the Father de Merode?
Father de Merode, D-E, capital D, small e, capital M-E-R-O-D-E. Father de Merode.
M-E...
R-O-D-E. De Merode.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a prince. He's a prince from Belgium.
Really?
Yes. In fact, my aunt's mother, she grew up in Belgium in the same town where their castle was, the de Merode Castle. And the parish priest would announce, the de Merodes, the family of the de Merodes have invited all the parish. They're welcome to come and skate on the moat around the castle if they wish during the winter. So the parish priest would announce, the family has welcomed everyone to come and skate. There'll be hot chocolate and French crepes. And the de Merode family, everyone loved them. My mother remembers them as a girl, and they thought highly of the de Merode family. They were a royal family in Belgium, and their castle still stands. So Father de Merode is in fact a prince, but a humble priest. And he joined with Archbishop Lefebvre. He was in Albania doing incredible work, converting many. And then whatever happened, I think it was Bishop Fillet who yanked him out of there. And Father de Merode pleaded, no, there's good families, they need the Mass, they need to be cared for. But they just, for some reason, abandoned Albania. And he was very disconcerted with that. So he's now in Lourdes, and he's with us, basically. He's with the fight of the Catholic resistance. And so, and he didn't agree. He doesn't agree, as far as I know. He didn't never agreed with Bishop Williamson's promotion of the new Mass miracles, new Mass gives grace nonsense. So let's move on, page 14. So nothing until we get a perfectly Catholic Pope, and we wait for that day. It'll be a happy day, and it will come. It will come. This was also the official position of the Society until 2012. For example, as confirmed by the General Chapter of 2006. Now, how old were you in 2006, Michael?
2 years old.
How old were you?
Like 1.
How old were you, Gavril?
4.
4?
4. 2.
How old were you in 2006, Anthony?
Was born.
You were just born. Okay, you little puppies. I remember this, 2012. The Society was very clear. No agreement till Rome comes back to tradition, until the doctrine is clear. And that was the whole position of the Society. It was the whole army, shoulder to shoulder, fighting the same fight for tradition. The church militant and the little remnant fighting, the little resistance fighting the SSPX worldwide. And here's the proof. This is Archbishop letter to Pope John Paul II, June 2nd, 1988. This is quoting it. Read it loud and clear. Who's next? Andres. The contacts
The contact of the Society continues occasionally with Roman authorities have for their only end to help these authorities to reappropriate the tradition that the Church cannot repudiate without losing her identity, and not the search for an advantage for ourselves, or to come to an impossible and purely practical agreement. The day when tradition will once again regain all its rights, the problem of our reconciliation will have no further reason to exist, and the Church will experience a new youth.
Yeah, Archbishop Lefebvre. So wonderful, right? Impossible to have a purely practical agreement, that is, get canonical recognition, unilateral recognition, without first solving what? Without
The doctrinal.
doctrine first, everything else second. What's first?
Doctrine.
What's first?
Doctrine.
And everything else?
Second.
Canonical solution first,
No.
second, third, fourth, or fifth. But always first is,
Doctrine.
and look at all the documents of the church, the councils, what's always first?
Doctrine.
Look at all the Catechism of the Council of Trent, the Catechisms of St. Pius X, Baltimore Catechism, traditional one, what's always first?
Doctrine.
What needs to be the primary importance in the formation of seminarians?
Doctrine.
Always doctrine. Bishop Fillet explained this position in the May-June 2006 issue of the Review Fidelitaire, which was published out of France. And these words radically condemn the new orientation taken since 2012. So this is Bishop Fillet in 2006, the old Bishop Fillet. Read it loud and clear, Michael.
It is impossible and inconceivable to pass to the third stage before these discussions have succeeded in exposing and correcting the principles at root of the crisis. We will not sign any agreement until such time as things are resolved on the level of principles. That is why we need to have in-depth discussions. We cannot allow ambiguities. The problem of wanting to make fast agreements is that they would necessarily be based upon lazy notions.
Lazy?
Hazy notions, and that no sooner signed would the crisis again reappear with renewed vigor. So, in order to resolve the issue, the Roman authorities would have to clearly and unambiguously manifest for all the world to see that there is only one way of coming out of the crisis, namely that of the church fully rediscovering her own bi-millennium tradition. The day when this conviction will be clear for the Roman authorities, even if things elsewhere remain unresolved, will be the time when agreements can be very easily made.
SSPX District of Great Britain District Letter, July 2006. Interview with Bishop Follet by Father Gregoire Cellier. Now that's the old Father Bishop Follet, and he saw clearly, right? That's wonderful. Look, this is just wonderful. We can't talk with Rome until they make clear their doctrine, no ambiguities. But until then, no declaring peace with modernist Rome. There were doctrinal discussions in Rome from 2009 to 2011 between Society of Theologians and Roman theologians. Yet these discussions failed insofar as the Romans showed that they were not looking for the truth. And Father Glaise, who was in these discussions, Father Michael Glaise, he said, the ones that they were discussing with, they're so far gone, they don't even have a grasp of basic catechism, of the basic truths. He said it's like talking another language. You see, when we say the church, when we say faith, especially words like faith and sacrament, we all understand the traditional mind and teaching of the church, right? But when you say faith to a modernist, what's that mean to a modernist?
The interior experience that you have.
Yeah, your interior experience is different from parents. Parents is different from some Buddhists, from Muslim. We all have different feelings of faith, but we all have the same faith in a modernist mind. Because faith is what your feelings are about God. So everybody has the same faith. It's a different, you see, you're on AM, FM, you're not connecting. The wires are, they're not connecting. And I remember this going on. I remember this. And let me just close. We'll pick up in 5 minutes. We'll take a break. We should finish this. It's too important. But I remember Father Jim Haynos. I call him Father Hugeness. He's 6'6" or 7. He's a good priest. But I saw him in the airport, and I said, Father, didn't you read the doctrinal declaration? No. I said, well, where do you find it? And I said, in the priest bulletin, in the Cor Unum of March 2013. And he just said, well, we're too busy. We don't really read those things. But I told him, you got to read it. But back in 2012 at the priest meeting, it was Father Haynos who we were talking, and he said, Bishop Follet flew up in Mr. So-and-so's airplane to Post Falls just to see us priests. He made a special trip just to see us priests and talk to us one-on-one. And Bishop Follet asked me, doesn't this seem to be the time to settle things with Rome? And Pope Benedict is very favorable. Don't you think this is a good time that we could seek the agreement with Rome? And Father Haynos said, I told Bishop Follet, I think he seems to be workable. He released the Latin Mass. He what was the other one? Lifted the excommunication. So I think it's a good time. And Bishop Follet met with all the priests, and they were all in agreement. This is the time for the agreement with Rome. And then I said to Father Haynos, Father Hugeness, wait a minute. Did I hear correctly? Make peace with this Pope? And I said, Father, don't you remember what happened last October? That would be October 2011. Pope Benedict held the Assisi meeting and allowed an atheist to get up on the podium and say, I want to thank Pope Benedict for allowing us to represent atheists at this prayer meeting who don't believe in God, and Buddhists and Muslims and Anglicans. And Father Haynos, he's a very honest cowboy Texan. And he said, wait a minute. Yeah, you're right, Father, you're right. This is not the time for the agreement with Rome. And he's honest. I wish he would be with us. He really should be. All these good priests should be with us. But it's not the time for the agreement with Rome until we have a
Holy Catholic Pope.
perfectly
Catholic Pope.
It's a simple solution, isn't it? You don't need to be a Joe theologian. We'll take a 5-minute break. Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.